Hi, I don't know if you can see the snow behind me, but it's the snowpocalypse day. I apologize for not being able to meet with you, but I was delighted to see all of the key terms and well, here I can show you all this stuff that you sent to me. So what I wanted to do was show you some ideas that I had. Now, refugee populations and language and all sorts of different things are related. My initial thought was this is related to communication, but when you're going into health professions, the nice thing that we have is in some of the health professions, there is a very, very strict description of terminology in their literature, so it doesn't go all over the place, um, which is handy. So I wanted to show you my first research trick for you. And this isn't the definitive answer to your question, but it's directions that you can go. My apologies again for not being able to meet with you, but I think we'll get some deliverables for you to validate what you've done already, if that makes any sense. So first of all, you could type in the catalog, but we're going to be multidisciplinary in the catalog. So I'm going to go into a specific database. And if you go into, so medicine is really good. But if you go into nursing, nursing has this great database called CINAHL. I don't know what the acronym stands for, but they have a very controlled vocabulary. So what I mean by controlled vocabulary is when somebody does an article on something, typically in any other discipline, you can pick your subject headings and just out of a hat, you can just whatever you think the reader is going to be most interested in about your article, you can pick. In the nursing profession, specifically in CINAHL, they have headings that are controlled vocabulary. So what that means is if you have this one heading, you have to sort it into another group of headings, which gives more consistency. For example, I'm going to do idiom, and you can see some suggestion. Idiomas is the Spanish version of idiom. I worked with my gender studies librarian who works with Beacon Scholars. But let me show you what we get. When we're looking in this bucket of nursing, I'm so going to sneeze here in a second, so I apologize. Apparently if you say banana, banana, that makes a sneeze go away. When you're doing search for key terms, you don't want to look at articles per se, but you want to look at how articles are described. So in this whole bucket, we have 726 search results. That's a good sample, and it's all in nursing or nursing related scholarly journals. And when you go down here, you can go to subject heading. And some of these other databases, they're going to have subject, but this one does not because it's narrowed down. When you click on subject heading, click on the show more, and here's a list of keywords related to idiom. Or when I did idiom and star, it would catch idiom, idioms, idiomas. But what you get is a number of instances where something is used with that term. And you can go through these and look for more key terms, especially if you're doing a systematic review, which it looks like you are. So language processing, not very many of them, but it's there. Figurative language, that might be a good one to use. Language is kind of arbitrary. I don't know if that one's going to work. But you get the idea. Ooh, translations. I did not think about that one. That's not going to catch the idioms per se, though. That might talk more about practice. And they're talking about populations. So you get the idea. What I would like to do is I would suggest I'm going to do idiom and refugee star, which will get refugee, refugees. Well, let's see. So we're already in health professions. I think you'd nail down the disease categories really well. But let's see what we get. Let's see if this is examples of what you were looking for. So here we have, there's only 12 results. This might be the key of what we were just looking for. You already had that great word, but maybe it was just the database or the context that we go into. So idioms of distress, I mean, that's a terminology that you had already used. Cultural translation, that one's really good. I'm going to go back and search that one again. Identity, formation. There's a lot of idioms of distress. I wouldn't narrow down to just that, but it might be an or. Isn't that wonderful? Not every database is going to do this. Let's do, what was that one that I wanted to look up? Cultural translation, was that it? Let's try, see how many we get. That when I put it in quotes, it means I want to find cultural and translation stuck together. So I'm looking in CINAHL again. How many did we get? Ooh, 76. Okay, let's do cultural translation and a specific population. How many did we get? We got just one, and it was that same one that we had saw. This is how you would test and validate keywords, by just swinging around that one angle of refugee, and then you have idiom, cultural translation, and you might try some other ones, and then you can test out the validity of each one of those keywords. Okay, so let me go through some databases. I'm going to grab, so say for example, idiom and refugee was a great set of keywords, and you want it from the last 7 years. Let me show you some things that you can look at. First of all, now knowing that these keywords work pretty well and they're very specific, you could do the library catalog. But for a systematic review, that's more of a discovery tool and not as easily systematically repeatable. So let me show you my favorite databases to try. Under communication is communication and communication sciences and disorders. Communication has some. These top two are pretty good. Communication has a lot to deal with rhetoric and writing and language, but it's also talking about media. This database is rather small, so don't be discouraged that there's only 2. Look at that. Oh my gosh, this is fascinating how they use this. Bogus refugees. So that one I would try a few. Another one, and that's not in the health context, so you might have, if your search results were way too big, then you might throw in some of those health contexts that you were interested in. Another one in sociology, I'm going to cross off my list as we go. So we got CINAHL was the nursing database, communication databases. Let me show you sociology. Sociological abstracts is rather big. So we can do idiom and refugee. Before we go into healthcare, let's see how it's described. So 664 results, that's really nice data set. Before we narrow down to the particular years, which you could do this way, I am going to go into the subjects again and see what they're talking about. Ooh, ethnography, I hadn't thought about that. Cultural identity shows up again. So on this one, you could just type in so that's medicine or medical, or any of the keywords that you had already thrown in there. But if I wanted to narrow down and see if refugees and idioms are something that is being written about in the health context. Whoa, my gosh. Still is 400. Sociological abstracts might be pretty good. Let's narrow down to our past 7 years. Can you believe it's 2020 already? It's thinking, oh, that's pretty sustainable. So all those keywords that you had, this might be a good way to do it. And you can also go into an advanced search and put those in rows as well, with the ands, the ors, the not. You can add a row. But sociological abstracts is one of my favorites, but you'll have to be more specific because it's all over the disciplines of sociology. For medical, there's one, so you can go into medicine again. Oh, I didn't think about ethnic studies. That might be a good one too. There is PubMed and Medline. They both have an overlap. Medline's okay. Again, I'm in the health context, so I don't need to worry about that. CINAHL and Medline. This might be a good place to go. If you're doing a systematic review, you're going to want to expand out, but this is a good place to start to validate the keywords that you've already chosen if you're getting weird search results. Last one, and I say my favorite for last, this is a systematic review or impact database. There's two of them. There's one called Scopus. There's one called Web of Knowledge. Web of Science? Web of Knowledge? Maybe it's Web of Science. It's Web of something. I'll show you Scopus. What you can do with Scopus is you can search by impact, or the number of times something has been cited. These are all top-tier journals, so the cream of the crop, as it were. And health or medicine. I'm way truncating these, but I'm just demonstrating the database. So you can add as many keywords as you want. Have you noticed that we're starting to see overlap? That's pretty cool. I remember seeing this one in like 2 other databases. All sorts of great things too. What I would encourage you to do in this database is maybe do a search like this, or even get rid of the context of healthcare and see how it's being described. Well, there's only 56. It really doesn't expand it all that much to get rid of the healthcare. But on this one, you can also go to keywords. In this database, keywords are identified by the author who writes the article. Except it's a huge list. And so you can see all sorts of ways that people are talking about it, including healthcare. So there's like mental health, gender, risk factors, rehab, all sorts of different things, specific countries and locations, populations. You get the idea. I think this is probably going to be the most, oh, there's idioms of distress again. This is probably going to be one of the best ones for you to go through. Looks like idiom and idioms of distress is a really good way to go. By the way, we can search for that. If there's a convention for idioms of distress, when you're backing out to see, so there's 270, they're not all about refugees, but what we can do from here is find the anchor article that was most influential about this particular topic. And how you do that is you go by number of times cited. And I apologize for going too fast. Hopefully you can go back and forth in YouTube. But what you can see is there's a lot of foundational articles from way back. So this is somebody who might have coined the phrase in 1981. And you can see everything. If you click on this number, you can see all the times that this has been cited. Or you can go in and narrow down or limit to the past 7 years, and it will still be sorted in that way. And so you can start to see patterns of what articles had the greatest impact. And if you get a bunch of people to cite you, you have impact. So it really is a quantitative ranking. I'm going to narrow it down. Let's see. Oh, I did idioms of distress. And I'm going to search within the results for refugee or refugees. And so, oh, and I want to do search within those results for healthcare or medicine or medical. And there, this might be. Oh, look at that, a systematic review of common idioms of distress. That might be something you could look at to see how they did it. Actually, I would highly recommend that. If you find an article that looks really good, I don't know if you're familiar with our library, which is okay if I'm going over something you already know, but you just click on the Find It button. If you click on this, you can get the abstract and info, but if you click on the Find It, it'll open it up in our catalog looking for a link to the database that houses that. What you get, though, is a link to interlibrary loan. So if we don't have full text, you can always, so here it shows up in this journal. I don't know what the unpaywall is, but this is interlibrary loan down here, request an article. This is also a document delivery service. So if you feel like you can't find something really quickly, click on this and request it through interlibrary loan, and it will be delivered to you whether we have it in the library or not. We can deliver it via that service. Okay, this is everything that I would have showed you. Let me know how it goes. This video should give you a lot of information of how you can proceed, but I am with you as we go, and keep me informed. And I'm going to send a note to your advisor to make sure they know that I was dragging my feet and being sick and all that stuff. So I apologize, and happy snow day, hopefully.